Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Podcast Digest. This is Dan Lizette. Thank you all very much for taking the time to return and join me again for episode 148. This one, I'm going back to what I did about a month ago. And for the second time, this will be what I call a solo show, which is just me talking. Because there's a few things to update all of you on since the last time I spoke to you like this. But before we do that, let me take care of just a few items of business. First of all, a couple of new Patreon supporters have come on board here to support me and this show directly, and I wanted to give them both a quick shout out. First of all was Sophie Harper from Not By Accident, now a Wondery show. She's been a guest on the show, and she's been a longtime supporter of the Podcast Digest, and I just wanted to take a moment and thank her for now supporting the Podcast Digest on Patreon. And also, Sleep With Me podcast is now a Patreon supporter, and I very much appreciate their support as well. So thank you both to Sleep With Me and Not By Accident, those shows now supporting the Podcast Digest. So thank you all very much. So let's get into the business of what's been going on with me and the Podcast Digest in the last month or so. So when I spoke to you last back in episode 144, I told you a lot about what was happening with kind of my day job life, all the things that were happening and all the things that were sort of affecting my ability to put out brand new long form episodes as I've done for over 2 years. Since we last spoke, obviously, you guys have seen a couple of guests then make an appearance for interviews. That was Suk-Yun Lee from Sleepover, which was an amazing conversation. That was episode 146. If you've not had a chance to hear that or listen to Sleepover, you definitely should. And then Jason Bryant from Matt Talk Online was last week's episode on 147. Jason and I went for a good long while. Super easy guy to talk to. Great stories, sports fan, into wrestling, etc. So if either of those conversations interest you and you've not heard them, please go back and check those out. But I had fun and was able to get those booked and recorded and put out there, and I was pretty happy about that. But this week has been a different story. Many of you know who follow me on Twitter at Pod Digest or are in our little corner of the independent podcaster community that I was in Cincinnati from Thursday to Saturday this week. And I was actually went there for an explicit purpose for a new business opportunity that I'll mention in brief in just a moment. But before I do, I need to get to what I did while I was there. And many of you probably already know at this point that I spent some time with Couple Things podcast with both Molly and Ben Mendenhall. They were my hosts for my time out there. I stayed at their house. And also with Ray and Michelle, Ray Laughlin and Michelle von Hirschberg, the other half of Couple Things podcast. And we all recorded in person on Friday night in Ray and Michelle's house, and we periscoped it. And so I believe if you go to the Couple Things podcast Twitter account at Couple Things Pod, you should be able to locate the Periscope stream of that live podcast. Now, a few things to mention before I get into the show itself that we recorded. First of all, Cincinnati was super cool. I had some great food, went to some great places between the business I was taking care of there, as well as Ben and Molly, who showed me around some of the biggest highlights of town. It was awesome. I had such a great time for only being there for about 48 hours. I saw a lot, I ate a lot, and had a blast, and it just could not have been a better experience. I have to thank, as I did at the end of the Couple Things recording, and I've done to them personally many times, I really have to extend a huge, gracious thank you to Ben and Molly for agreeing to put me up. I mean, sometimes when you agree to put a stranger up from the internet in your home, you know, you never know exactly what's going to happen or how it's going to go or what have you. From my perspective, I think it went great. I had a great time. They were so kind and so generous with their time, with willingness to kind of take me around and just opening their doors to me. So again, my sincere gratitude for Molly and Ben for helping me out and putting me up. Then I had a long day Friday working, if you will, and then we agreed that we were going to record a live episode. Now, anybody who listens to Couple Things normally knows that they don't do guests, and I've actually told them many times I don't think that they should, because I believe it's the four of them whose stories, interaction, conversation is what makes Couple of Things podcast one of my favorite shows out there. The interaction that they all have, the kind of banter is listening gold. If you don't listen to Couple Things Podcast, you're not podcasting right, folks. Honestly, it is a ton of fun to listen to them. But once, way back when, they decided to try having a guest, and I did that. And I had a blast, brought my own topic, all that other fun stuff. But this was a year and a half ago. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but it was a long time ago, and it was done via Skype. Well, come to find out, just coincidentally, when this business opportunity I'm exploring took me to Cincinnati, we said, hey, I could come back as a guest again, this time in person. And man, what a blast. One, I don't think I've ever recorded a guest spot in person. I've had one guest on my show in the studio here in southeastern Pennsylvania. And I did some floor recordings at Podcast Movement last year as well that were in episode 100. But so it's not that I've never recorded with people in person, but I've never been a guest on somebody's show in person, especially in a situation where they typically don't have guests. But we kind of hit the ground running, and it was over 2 hours of just insanity. It was so much fun, and everybody was so great to talk to joke with, to laugh with, to interact with, and it was like living in a podcast. A quick side story. Before we started recording, we were kind of snacking on chips and dip, and Molly made some dip, and Michelle was cooking up some stuff, and Ben was fastening my mic stand with a bunch of duct tape to hold the microphone I bought, which you can see on the Periscope feed. And I had one moment when we were all sitting there beforehand, and I kind of stopped everybody, and I said, whoa, I just had this really weird feeling. I feel like I'm just like living in the podcast right now, because all four of them were in the kitchen. I was standing there, and they were all just kind of talking, about normal stuff. And I was like, this is exactly what it's like to listen to the show, but I'm standing right here. It was so cool. So then we went out and we started to record the show itself, and then it just went crazy. The topics we had were absolutely insane, and we just had such a blast. It is everything you hear on that show is real, and then some. It's even better in person than listening to it, and that says a lot, considering it is one of my favorite shows, and one of the shows that I probably get the most entertainment value out of, if you will. So it was an absolute blast. You can see it. I don't want to give away too much because I want you to go listen to it. Follow them at Couple Things Pod on Twitter, or more importantly, open up your podcast player, subscribe to Couple Things Podcast, and it should be their next episode out as of the time of this recording, depending on when you're listening to this. Check it out. It was a ton of fun. So. But let me get back into Cincinnati proper and why I was there in the first place, and tell you a little bit about sort of one of the things that's been taking up so much of my time and is likely to continue to do so. One of the reasons why the release schedule has been a little sporadic lately. So I am exploring the idea for my next chapter. Those of you who listened to the solo episode last month, remember that I am in the process of getting laid off of my day job. That date's actually July 31st. So my day job I've been at over 11 years, due to a lot of business cost-cutting decisions they're making, are closing the office that I currently work in, and there is no place for me in sort of the next chapter. So that's one of the major reasons that I've been sort of spending so much time trying to figure out what I'm going to do next for my own life, my own career, but more importantly, providing for my family in this house and so on and so forth. I've explored a bunch of different options, but I decided that I really didn't want to go through something like this again if I could avoid it. And I've always had the idea in the back of my mind of someday, what about looking at starting my own thing? And I've had a lot of ideas, and I've even done some mock-up spreadsheets with, small, early on business models and if it could work and so on and so forth. It was really tough and difficult to kind of get through to a place where I felt comfortable taking that leap. Well, an opportunity came up to potentially buy a franchise of an existing business, one that does that provides a nature of product that I'm super passionate about. I'm not going to dive into all the specifics yet for you guys, but I would anticipate those coming soon. There's still some administrative things that I need to clear and take care of before I can 100% fully say this is what I'm doing. But I wanted to share with you that that's in essence what I'm doing is exploring purchasing a franchise, bringing it out to the Philadelphia, Southeast Pennsylvania market for the first time. The organization does not currently have a presence in this area. And it's about a topic in a matter that I am extremely passionate about, super interested in, and it may hold the keys to a completely different future than I ever had planned for sitting in the corporate world for 20 plus years as I've had. So I'm super excited about that's why I went to Cincinnati. I went to a dinner with some of the organizers and then spent all day at their corporate office on Friday, learning more, gathering more information, meeting a lot of the key people that I'd be working with when I proceed down the road. But I'm definitely proceeding. I'm looking forward to it. This is my new direction. And as I clear some of the administrative hurdles that need to happen between now and then, I plan on pulling back the veil completely and letting all of you know sort of exactly what it is that I'm going to be doing and telling you all about it in the future. But in the meantime, there will be more new TPDs. There will be more new interviews. I've got a couple of the people that I've worked with often with some of the bigger networks, some of the marketing people and PR people, I think have kind of realized that I've been struggling for bookings. They've been reaching out, making a lot of hosts available to me, so that's been great. I've received tons of emails about people willing to come on and so on and so forth. I should say that, as I've said many times, and I don't think I've reiterated in a while, I don't want to just bring people on that are not necessarily shows that I've been a huge fan of or very passionate about, or I feel have a super interesting story. I don't want guests just to have somebody on the other end of the Skype call talking and put that out. I have strove for, September will be 3 years with this show, to provide high quality content, interviews that I hope are interesting with guests that I hope you'd like to hear from and know more about their product and their show. And I don't want to water that down just to have somebody else on the other end with, a small independent show, two guys talking in a garage out of, some small town somewhere, and they've been launched for 2 weeks and they're like, oh, can I come on your show? And they just want to promote. I'm not a promotional vehicle. I've said that many times. So I want to try to bring you great interviews with great creators with great shows. And if I feel like I can't do that or I'm not able to work that out, then I'm going to put an episode like this up, a solo show, or maybe a rerun from what I like to think is a pretty darn good back catalog. So just so you know, it's not a question of finding people to talk to. I've got lots of those. It's finding people to talk to that I really feel have a great story to tell and are super interesting and bring a great show to the fore that I want all of you to know more about. So that's where we stand. A week from now, I have no idea what's going to happen next week. I have no idea now that I'm back from Cincinnati what the next week or two looks like. It's going to continue to be super hectic. In fact, the month of July itself, I mentioned earlier, my last day at the day job will be July 31st. So between now and then could get a little crazy for me. Right now, I'm going to try to keep releasing every Sunday morning with something new, something interesting, something fresh. Although I would be being dishonest if I didn't say that there is not an off chance that I may put things on hold for a slight summer break, so to speak. Again, not what I want to do, but right now I've got a lot going on, a lot of priorities I need to take care of, a lot of areas where my attention needs to be focused on. So we'll see. We'll see what comes of it. Either way, I hope that you enjoyed this brief solo episode. I like to keep these short the couple times I've done them. And besides, if you want new content that I'm a part of, admittedly, in my mind, a very small part of, the Couple Things Podcast episode is coming out this week. So I'm just going to direct everybody over to Couple Things Podcast, where you can hear Ray, Michelle, Ben, and Molly, and me invade their awesome recording space. It was so fun. Periscoping it, we duct taped the phone to the wall, and duct tape was a big part of the show, come to think about it. But it was a great time. Great episode. Ray's probably struggling to edit it all together as we speak right now, the poor guy. So go check out that episode. Stay tuned to the Podcast Digest. We'll see what comes your way next week. In the meantime, that's my little solo update. So thanks for taking the time to listen, guys, and I'll be back again soon. Until then, for the Podcast Digest, my name is Dan Lizette.